I don't know why we're in a habit of you doing it all the time, so.
It's the one thing. You want to try it?
Sure. Hello, and welcome to Roll for Topic, a podcast where Andy has to do the intro. And hello, and welcome to Roll for Topic, a podcast where we talk about topics related to running role-playing games. My name is Andy Rao. I almost identified myself. Hello, and welcome to Roll for Topic, a podcast in which we discuss topics related to running role-playing games. My name is Andy Rao.
And I'm Chris Salzman. Good job, Andy.
So, Chris, what's going on with you these days?
Yeah, so I am prepping for a short, I'm calling it like a one-shot. It'll really end up being like a probably 2 to 3 session mini campaign. I'm going to go a little light on the details because I think a couple of the players listen to the podcast. So this is going to go live, the morning of our first session. So it'll be very fresh in their minds if I say anything. But yeah, we're going to do something Strahd related, which should be super fun. Yeah, so I've been reading that book and it's great. Like I really like the thing that I'm doing for it is we're basically running the Ravenloft castle.
And so just to clarify, by the book, do you mean the Curse of Strahd, the recent Ravenloft campaign?
Yes. Yeah. The recent one, not the old one, although I'm not even sure if they're that different.
Yeah. I'm just curious, did you think about digging up the old one?
Not really, mainly because it's just an access thing, right? So the library had a copy of the new one.
Nice.
So I'm just getting that one. Yeah, so I was curious. I've been meaning to actually ask you this. Did you play the old module back in the day?
I did, yes. One of our more successful, long-running kind of ongoing things in my high school game way back in the day was the second edition version of Ravenloft. Second edition took the idea of Ravenloft and expanded it from basically like a spooky one-shot and tried to make it a little bit more of a campaign setting that you could run for a long time. And that had some good and some bad things about it.
So you have fond memories of it.
I have really fond memories, and I think I still have my old 2E Ravenloft stuff. So one of the gimmicks of the way they tried to make it into a setting is they imagined that the kind of world of Ravenloft is comprised of, lots of little independent kingdoms of evil. And what I loved is a lot of those kingdoms were inspired directly by like literary horror. So there was like the Frankenstein Kingdom and the Island of Dr. Moreau Kingdom, and not all of them were lifted straight out of classics, but most of them had some sort of inspiration. But it was kind of funny because you weren't always supposed to know who like the ruler of the land was. But if you were familiar with the story of Frankenstein, for example, it usually wasn't very hard to like who's the bad guy behind the scenes here. It's probably
Dr. Frankenstein. That's really great. Yeah, the foreword to the Curse of Strahd book that was put out recently, they talk a little bit about sort of like the history of vampires and some of that lore, and like it's super neat. It reminded me of, I took a class in college where we specifically read like romance literature and some like those like early horror stories, I guess you could say. And that was the first time that I'd read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I was in college, and I just remember being like transfixed by it because it's a really good story.
That is one of those classics that if you made it through like high school, college without being assigned to read it, and you've always assumed it's like a tedious slog, it's a fantastic book.
Not at all. Yeah, I think the Hollywood adaptations really focus on sort of the monster part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book, in fact, just gets into all this depth about like what the monster is feeling, and like it's just really cool. Yeah. So I'm prepping for that, which is really nice because it's been a while since I prepped something. One thing that I'm doing along with this is I found a lines and veils checklist. So this is a kind of consent safety tool that someone's put together. So I found someone who put together a Google form that just basically asks like every possible thing you could want to everybody. So I modified it a little bit and sent it out to the players, and I've already gotten one response back, and I'm not going to reveal anything about what they said because that's private information, but I will say that I was a little surprised at the answers already, and it made me realize that this is actually a super good thing to put in front of your players, especially if there's stuff that you sort of just assume is going to be okay or not okay. Like actually asking them might reveal some stuff that you're surprised by. Yeah, so there's even like a few things on there that for me I'm just like absolutely not, like we'd never touch that, and I think players might be okay with it too, right? So it's like there's kind of a give and take there as well.
Nice. It sounds like you did it right, which is you took the idea, you kind of tailored it to your group and the game you're thinking about running, and got some good info. That's cool.
Yeah, we'll try to put a link to that form. There's a form that someone put together that you can easily copy and make it your own if you want to. I'll try to throw that in the show notes.
I had a quick question about your Strahd game, and if this is too spoilery, it's fine. We can pass on it, and maybe we could make it a little bit more general. But so when you have something that is a very familiar trope, like a vampire in a mansion, what is your kind of inclination? Do you like to lean into all of those tropes, so garlic and running water and stakes through the heart, or when you're dealing with something that's really familiar, do you try and find a different spin to surprise your players with?
I don't think I'm clever enough to really come up with a new idea in vampire lore. So for me, I think it's going to be leaning into the tropes, which will be the most fun part. So I really adore the game Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the original PlayStation.
Yeah.
Which, geez, it's probably 25 years old at this point. But yeah, that game is a really fun game for me, and there's a bunch of them for the Game Boy Advance as well that are kind of in that same vein of these 2D side-scrolling Castlevania games. But I've always enjoyed the Dracula depiction in that one, so I will most likely just sort of lift that entirely.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, because it's sort of the fun of this is not necessarily for me, at least with the time constraints that we have, the fun is not going to be discovering this big story. It's going to be more we have to stop Dracula. Sorry, Strahd.
So how did you take a 300-page book like Strahd, and how did you find a one-shot in that?
Yeah, so I will tell you very generally, very, very generally, right? So if you're listening and you're going to be playing in this game with me, I guess maybe skip forward 2 minutes or something. But yeah, so there is someone has actually put together a one-shot variant of Curse of Strahd. It's called Strahd Must Die Tonight, I think is the full title. So you basically just run Ravenloft. You do a little bit of prep beforehand to deal from the deck, right, to decide kind of where stuff is.
Yep.
And stuff, and then you just start immediately with you're on your way in to the castle, and then it's just from there you're more or less trying to set up a confrontation. So that is all I will say at this point.
Okay, yeah. No,
but
that's neat.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah. There's some fun prop stuff too that I'm hoping to do. Yeah. So assuming that this isn't a total disaster, we will probably talk more about it on this podcast.
Yeah, let's plan on it. And is this an online game or in person?
We're going to try to do it in person. So that should be good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's vaccinated. A few of us will have boosters, I think, by then too. So we're gonna do inside. We'll have the windows cracked and stuff, but it feels relatively safe with the group that I'm playing with. So that's always a concern, right? It's how do you do this safely?
So how many minutes into the game is it going to be before you have to remove your fake vampire teeth?
Oh yeah, I was actually that was something I was debating this morning. It's am I even going to try to put them in? Part of me thinks that it would be really fun to have them and put them in every time I'm speaking as Strahd.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that just seems cumbersome and probably kind of gross.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it. Yeah. But so you're going to be running a one shot too, a Halloween one shot as well. Can you tell me about that?
By the time this episode airs, I will have run a spooky Western one shot for my oldest kid's high school RPG.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So they're doing a spooky one-shot Wednesday, and I don't know who else or how many other people will be running spooky one-shots, but I know I'm one of them. So it's just something I've put together using Savage Worlds, which I chose because Savage Worlds does a couple of things fast that other games do slow, mainly combat. I'm at that point where I'm really only going to have 2.5 hours maybe for the game, which is not very much time, as we all know. And so I've got a adventure put together, but it really has too much stuff in it. So I'm at that point between now and then. I need to kind of decide what am I going to trim or prepare to cut out on the fly, on the assuming that we don't get to it. So
that's always hard to do. Do you have a method that you use for determining that, or is it just sort of whatever feels right?
I would like the final experience to explore kind of the range of types of stuff you do in role-playing games. So I would like to have a cool mostly social role-playing encounter. I would like to have a good everybody's rolling the dice and rolling damage big fight scene. And I would like to have a scene where the players are using skills that aren't fighting and aren't talking necessarily to get through it. So think I feel like I could get at least 2 of those types of role-playing scene into the game. I would feel like we played a nice, like, reasonably varied one shot. How about you? Like, when you have a one shot, and do you think about the types of scenes you want to do?
Yeah. What I try to do is like whittle it down to locations or rooms that like I know that I want to hit on. There's like a little bit of gray area in there as far as the transitions and stuff are concerned. Every time that you have a new location, you're going to have some amount of setup. There's going to be players kind of investigating the room, interacting with it and stuff, and then them leaving the room. Right. So like at a minimum, even if there's really nothing in a room, that's going to be 5 to 10 minutes, right? If not 15 or more. Right. So like that's sort of how I think about pacing. It's like, okay, so if we have 2.5 hours, like you might be able to only hit on the saloon, maybe like a shootout in the in the street, and then the creepy place that you're going to go to, right? You think about that's going to be like a half an hour or 45 minutes, and then whatever your remaining time is. So I tend to think about it like, in terms of that, and then also maybe the encounters that are going to happen.
So one of the practical things that I'm wrestling with right now, and I don't know if this will kind of be our topic of discussion here, or if we just want to banter about it for a couple minutes and move on, but I am really trying to wrap my head around, how am I going to teach people that have never played Savage Worlds the rules really quickly? So Savage Worlds is like medium light crunch, if those terms make sense.
Yes.
It's not lasers and feelings, but it also it's not GURPS either. So, if we have like 2-ish hours to play, that's not much time. And I don't have any reason to think that any of these kids will have any familiarity with Savage Worlds. So are there any like really practical things that you have seen done or that you have done that told people what they need to know quickly?
Yeah, well, first let's just plan on talking about this. I think this is a good topic in itself, especially as we're going into the holidays and stuff. I think a lot of people are going to be doing like one shot games and stuff. At least I know I will. The things that I've seen work really well are like player aids, right? So stuff that you might not do for a long campaign because you assume they're going to just they'll slowly pick it up over time, is like just really explicitly spelling out like, in this situation you're going to roll this die and we're going to look at the result, right? So the Halloween one shot I did last year, we used a lasers and feelings variant, and I tried to write out like sort of exactly what was going to happen on each die roll, and that ended up being really helpful. And I also didn't provide enough detail in it as well. Like I almost wish I had been like gone even more overboard with it, because there's so much other stuff happening during a one shot that like you're gonna be with high schoolers, like someone's gonna have to use the restroom, like someone's gonna be late, like all that sort of stuff's gonna happen as well. So anything you can do to just make it like super simple for, here's sort of your default action or actions that you'll probably be taking quite a bit, like just make sure that's super crystal clear, color coded if possible. One question that I have though, is what about the actual gameplay of Savage Worlds makes sense over something that they might be familiar with? So I know Savage Worlds, the most I know about it is you ran us through sort of like a character creation part of that, right? So it's really fast to come up with characters and stuff. Is the actual gameplay of Savage Worlds, is that lend itself well to a one shot better than say like a system that they already know, like D&D?
So here's what Savage Worlds does differently that I think is the most significant. As far as do you succeed at an action or do you not? It's basically like D&D and every other game. You roll a couple of dice and you beat a number, But one thing it does in combat is its combat system is not about whittling down hit points or tracking hit points and stuff like that. In Savage Worlds, you either, there's some nuance to this that I'm not going to go into right now, but when you're attacking something, basically you either kill it or you don't. And so the task of combat is you need to get the damage you inflict high enough to get over the kill it threshold. If that makes sense. So if you hit it and you don't manage to kill it, and I'm talking about just regular minions, there's slightly different rules for big boss fights, but so you hit it, and if you hit it but you don't do enough to kill it, you put it into a shaken condition, or think of it as a mild stun. But if you can get your damage over a certain threshold, you can just instantly kill it and take it off of the table. And it works its initial appeal was it did big battles really quickly, because you could actually have 24 things on the battle mat at the same time, and you don't have to track 20 different things, hit points and stuff like that. So that's what appealed to me, because I know in a Western game we need to have one big shootout scene, and I also kind of like the tension it adds. Like there's something that gets a little bit, I don't know, it's not very exciting to me about just like whittling something's hit points down, but I do
Hmm.
kind of like the like, all right, what can we do? What bonuses can we add? What tricks can we do to so that when you hit, we're likely to get way over that kill threshold? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, couldn't players combine actions then? So if we like both attacked at the same time?
So you can combine actions, you can do the usual
Okay.
shenanigans, you can aim, you can
Hmm.
sneak up, you can flank, that sort of thing. So that's what it does differently. In other respects, it's pretty much a typical RPG.
Yeah, I wonder if like for your specific circumstance, I wonder if writing out some of those actions would be helpful. So like you just said, you can aim, you can like sneak, like you can do some of those things. Like maybe write down here are the moves that you'll most likely use. Like make it clear they can do other stuff outside of that, but it's like, hey, you might have to do a quick draw. So it's just like you have quick draw written down.
Yeah, I was thinking of trying to write as much as useful information as I can on individual people's character sheets, because they'll be picking from pre-gen characters, and each pre-gen character has, a couple of special abilities, so I want to make sure that those are called out on the character sheet. And some other things I usually do, like, get a highlighter or something and mark the key skills or key items that your character has. So yeah, I wonder if I might just try to squeeze on the character sheet a little list of the actions that would be most appropriate for each particular character to be thinking about doing based on what they're good at.
Is there like, what do you foresee? So you're going to sit down and play. Do they need to know anything about their character sheet before they can do something like order a drink at the bar, right? Like, do they have to know exhaustively what's going to happen mechanically before they can actually play the game?
So that's a good question. It's one I was going to kind of toss over to you as well. I would kind of like to avoid like a 15-minute, like, here's the character sheet and here's how we resolve actions and stuff. So the first scene that they're in, I think will work pretty well if they just describe what they want to do and I'll tell them what to roll. It's not super combat heavy, so mostly the most complicated thing they'll need to do is like, okay, find this skill on your sheet and roll that, whatever die is listed there, and tell me what you get. So I'm hoping, at least for the first scene, unless you tell me I should approach this differently, I'm not going to start with like a here's how the rules work. I'm just going to kind of organically, as they try to do stuff, I'll say, all right, well, you want to try to convince him to let the hostage go? Well, that sounds like a persuade roll, so look on your sheet and do that. Is that how you would handle it? Or do you find it's helpful to give like a kind of, if I were like a veteran role player, I would actually find it useful to get an overview of like, hey, here's how the game works. Here's like what it thinks is important. Here's the resources you will be managing over the course of this one shot. I would find that a little bit helpful. If I'm like a newbie, maybe who hasn't played much else besides D&D, I don't know if I would really want to.
I think, as is abundantly clear from listening to this podcast, like, we are not normal game players. So like, yeah, what we want is definitely not, I think, what a lot of people will want. I think your instinct is right to not dive into anything ahead of time. Like, if you're going to say anything, it might just be like setting the scale of what's going to require a dice roll. So like you might say like, hey, you can walk across the room, like that's no dice roll needed, but if you need to leap over a table, that's going to require a dice roll. Or maybe that it doesn't, right? Like, it's just like you can do sort of all these things up until this point, and then we need to get dice involved at that point. I think the only thing I would caution is to make sure you interject that first mechanical thing before they get themselves in a situation where they wish they had known what the mechanics are, right? So if there's a hostage situation but they could have stopped it beforehand with a dice roll, like then there's a problem there. The other thing you might do is like not try to teach them the mechanics so much as just, when they try something, tell them what they have to do at that point.
Yep.
Like, I think I've seen that approach work well, I think, for games, especially if someone's learning. Like, this is like the difference between a player saying like, I'm going to roll for a perception check versus them just saying like, well, I want to look at that. And then you say, okay, roll D20 for your perception check.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. And honestly, outside a couple of combat situations, that's probably pretty doable. Here's the one thing that I feel like I will have to educate them on how to use. It has an economy, like a meta currency of like, they're called bennies, but they're basically like action points or luck points that you spend, and they can do different things in different circumstances. So you can use them to reroll dice that you don't like. You can use them to shake off conditions that you don't like. So that's the one thing that like I think they might need or want to know pretty upfront. Like that this is a thing that lets you break. You don't know the rules of this game exactly, but the pile of currency you have in front of you will let you kind of break the game rules in various ways. So yeah.
Can you give them a free one of those somehow? With things like that where you have sort of the decision to spend extra on something, it's useful to just sort of know like how that feels. Right. So if there's a way to have like a starting scenario where it's like it's expected that you're going to spend this thing, and then we can kind of see how the mechanics work. Right. Like give them a free one somehow. And it's like then you have them fail and then they can use it and try it again.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, just have a situation where I try to engineer people using up some points without worrying that they're gonna.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, and you could even just like tell them we're gonna play out a very short 1 minute scenario in which I make you use this, or have an NPC sort of do it very clearly in front of them. Like maybe they're playing poker and like someone cheats, right, and then you get to spend the Benny to see if you can cover it or not. I make it a lot of assumptions about how the game works, but it's like
no, I mean you're I mean the way you're imagining it working is pretty much how it works with a few wrinkles. So. There's one other thing that I have really grown to like about Savage Worlds just while prepping this. I haven't played Savage Worlds in a really long time. It uses a deck of cards to determine initiative.
Oh, interesting.
It's just more fun than rolling for initiative. I mean it's a little slower, but I don't know. There's just in playing around and testing it out, it's just a lot more interesting to like wait to see what card you get dealt than it is to just roll a d20 and say, I got a 12.
Yeah, there is something about that. You're going to let them draw from the deck, or are you going to deal out?
I think I'm going to have one player be assigned to be the dealer, and that person will like kind of be responsible for dealing out each round. So the time-consuming part is you do it each round, and something special happens if you pull a joker. So you need to do it every round. I don't know, I think it'd be more fun if one of the high schoolers was doing the cards.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a super super fun thing. I think for one shot that'll be like just a delight to have them drawing that, especially if they draw the Joker. I almost wonder if you could get like a handful of extra Jokers to put in there depending on how things are going.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you don't have to blow up your action economy because of that idea, but it's also like right. I mean, like it's a one shot. Like it's kind of more fun if it swings, back and forth a little bit more.
So here's a dumb question for you. So if I were to get one piece of paraphernalia for the dealer to like wear or have, what would it be that a high schooler would like think was kind of funny? Like if you're in a casino, does the dealer like wear a certain hat, or like how does it work?
Yeah, so the high schooler finding it funny, I think, makes it a little bit harder, but I don't really care about what high schoolers think is funny or not, because they just need to learn that it's okay.
I take that back. That I would find funny.
That you would find funny. Yeah. You need to get one of those vests, like an oversized vest. I feel like dealers will often have those at casinos. Okay. At least in the depictions of casinos that I see, I have no idea what actually happens in real casinos.
I was gonna say
these days.
I might just, if I Google like casino dealer, like is there like an outfit that you usually wear?
Yeah, I think so. Don't they have like visors or something? See, someone who's listening to this podcast is like screaming at us right now. It's like it's clear what they would be wearing in the early 1900s. Yeah, whenever the Wild West was. I feel like they also had like green visors maybe. I think that's something, and then like a vest. Again, don't do this just because I brought it up on the podcast, but it would be kind of fun to like tell the dealer player to like cheat every once in a while, like give them an extra Joker that they can slide up their sleeve.
Oh, that's actually really fun.
Give them a little bit more power. Although, I mean, I think getting to deal is going to give them enough power.
Well, the way I have this pictured is, these are high schoolers, so they'll make more of the dealer role than like an adult probably.
Yes, absolutely. An adult would just be like, I guess I got to do this. That's super fun. It sounds like you're thinking through everything appropriately. I mean, I'm just very curious what's going to happen in the first 20 minutes that will blow up your plan, but...
Oh, for sure. I realized that my game does kind of assume that people will be motivated to like be heroic figures, which now that I think about every game I've ever run with like kids, with like junior hires, and it has you can't assume that at all. So I guess that
Yes.
might be the first place it goes awry, if they're like, we're going to join the bank robbers instead of like try to stop them, like that sort of thing. So
Yeah, which honestly you might want to start with an expectation about like who who the players are supposed to be. Yeah, just to kind of head off some initial shenanigans.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It would be really funny to see what they do to go crazy, but on the other hand, we don't have like an hour and a half to like go down a rabbit trail, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Especially because it only takes one player to decide that they're going to be like the evil player, and then it's just like, well, okay, you've sort of ruined it for everybody. If like everybody decides that they're going to join up with the bandits, like that's a different story. But if there's one person who peels off, then yeah, it's like, well, okay, but we're also trying to tell this story over here.
All right, so one quick last question. This is just like your opinion question. So this is it's like a horror Western scenario. So they will be bumping into some supernatural like bad guy stuff. But for the most part, all the pre-gens I have are just regular like townsfolk that you would find in the Old West. Should I stick in a good guy with some sort of supernatural powers, or should I have one of the PCs have some sort of special abilities, or should I keep them all straight like townsfolk?
Oh, that's a super good question. I think you keep them all like normal people, unless you're going to give them all powers of some sort.
I don't want to do that for various reasons.
Yeah, I think
it would really alter the tone of the game, and it would add like the powers are where you have to use the rules more, and I would kind of like to avoid that if possible.
Yeah. Maybe if you do want to like give them somewhat of an ability for like supernatural something, maybe it's more like an item that they can pick up at some point that affects like everybody. Yeah, like holy water, right? Like they need holy water to go into the final area.
Yes, that's actually a really good idea, and I can think of some ways to do that. Okay.
Yeah, because you could also use that to gate things a little bit too. Honestly, it's like you like they know they have to go to this haunted mansion at the edge of town or something, but like they learn that in order to even survive walking through the threshold, they have to have holy water, symbol of the cross or something like that.
So I actually have one final question. I said that was the final one, but I have another one. So the other thing I have not yet decided on is whether I hand people pre-generated characters with a motive written down for like, here's why you're getting involved in this, instead of running for cover like everybody else. Should I do that? Or should I ask a bunch of high schoolers, why is your character like stepping up to be the hero here? Am I asking for trouble if I ask a bunch of kids to come up on the fly with like motives for being where they are?
Are they theater kids?
I think it's a mix, I mean, they're the sort of kids that would be in the RPG club. So,
yeah.
It's not even a kid specific thing. I guess like if you're playing a one shot, is it more fun for you to have like the kind of a backstory and reason that I'm in the adventure written on the character sheet? Does it help you know how to play that character right off of the bat? Or do you prefer the added kind of personal investment of having come up with something yourself on the fly?
I think that's going to be highly player specific. For me, I would much rather just have it written down. It's like, you're right. Like if I'm going to have the whole character sort of decided ahead of time for me anyway, I might as well also have the motive. Right. And like ideally the pre-gen should be such that like as they're picking them, it's pretty clear what the motive is. As well, I think. So it's not even necessarily, I think, like a line at the bottom that says like, here's your motive. It's more woven throughout, and then maybe you can restate that at the end, or you state it up top. It's like, hey, you're the town's sheriff, and you have like 3 people have died this past year. Like you want to end this right now, and then there's the pre-gen.
I think you're right, and I think that's what I would prefer too. And if some of the pre-gens are pretty obvious, like you're the town sheriff, you're the town muckraking journalist. That's obvious. There's a few I do hope that people choose a couple of the like you're just like a housewife who is in town to buy butter or something like that. Because it's fun to have those PCs in with the group next to the grizzled gunslingers.
Yes.
But even with the housewife, I'm going to make sure there's at least a hook that the player can use to like justify jumping in.
Yeah, I always like I like characters that have really mundane motivations in these like high stress situations. It's like, yeah, maybe
Yes.
the like the woman who's just trying to buy some flour or something. It's like, oh, sorry, like the vampire on the edge of town bought all the flour like last week,
Yes.
and she's like,
Yes.
all right, I'm getting my gun. I gotta go get that. Like something like that is really fun to mix in. I think with the more high minded ideals of like stopping the vampire from killing everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for one shots especially, you know, it's that like idea that Dungeon Crawl Classics taps into, that like you're just you're regular guys and gals from the village. You're not, you know, and that's part of what makes it kind of fun and funny to play, that but you're a bunch of farmers like going into the vampire castle, not, you know, not knights of the Holy Order, but yeah. Well, anyway, thank you for helping me think through all that stuff, Chris.
Oh yeah,
I won't subject you to too much to any more one shot talk here today, but this is actually tangibly useful for me. So thanks for taking.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, it's good. It's it makes me excited. I'm really anxious to get the recap on air of how it went.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm strangely nervous about this one. I don't know. I mean, partly it's because, you know, like I say, I haven't done Savage Worlds in like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So coming to the latest version of Savage Worlds without having played it recently. And I like running games for kids, but these are, you know, these are older kids than I usually run games for. And, you know, I won't know most of them. So it'll be fun. But, you know, there's a little bit of healthy anxiety. I hope it's healthy anxiety there. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, it sounds like, yeah, you're doing a new thing for a new group of people. Like it'd be odd if you didn't have some anxiety, I think, about it. Right? Yeah, this means that you care, but...
Yep, it does. It means that I care. Well, just remember that as the session goes down in flames.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, we should wrap it up. Yeah. So this was super good. I think the only thing that I wanted to mention that I've been thinking about as we've been talking about this is I watched Midnight Mass recently. So this is a new show on Netflix. Okay. It's like a horror miniseries of some sort, but I really enjoyed it. It is not for everybody, I don't think. There's a lot of long monologues about like religious suffering and things of that nature. So if that sounds good to you at all, I highly recommend it.
Okay, well, let's call it an episode here. So any final thoughts, or should we sign out?
Yeah, let's sign off. I guess if you are running a one shot for Halloween, we'd love to hear about it. I think, strangely, this has become like I think my favorite holiday for running games. It's not something I would have thought a couple years ago, sure. But yeah, it's been good. Yeah, so yeah, please let us know if you're running anything cool that you wanna share. We are enthusiastic about that. But yeah, I think that's about it. So I'll sign off and say I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
And remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM.